here's Brodie Brazil.
I'm here to break down what is absolutely the number one rule for pilots, and it goes like this: aviate, navigate, and communicate in that order. It's so simple, but that last part, it is so important, in that order. This is a rule, a golden rule, which applies to pretty much every pilot. It's a checklist for every single flight. Doesn't matter if you're in a helicopter or a blimp or a Cessna or an airliner. Aviate, then navigate, then communicate in that order. And I'm going to break down all three of those things here in just a second because there's a lot deeper levels and layers to them. But first, can I say, if you like content like this, if you like subjects like this, consider subscribing to the channel because I've got a lot more on the way. And also by the end of this video, if you actually like it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up so that others can be recommended to it right here on YouTube. Okay, so let's begin with the aviating. What are we talking about here? Yeah, it's simple and it's obvious, but there's a lot going on. Like, for example, maintaining proper flying speed. Not too slow so that you're in danger of stalling, and not too fast so that you're not risking the airframe. Also, you don't want to turn too tightly one way or the other. No great bank angles. You don't want to G-load this airplane as you're trying to figure out a problem. Find a solution to something, right? This is usually when it comes up. Aviate, navigate, communicate. It's usually when the pilot all of a sudden has to deal with something else. You want to keep flying the airplane, keeping it in a proper attitude. It also includes terrain avoidance. When you talk about aviating, knowing a proximity to the ground, having a great situational awareness, where are trees, where is terrain, buildings, obstructions, things of that nature. Because a lot of times you're often dealing with equipment failures, right, on an airplane. These are things that absolutely need to get settled and sorted away so that you can continue aviating and then navigating and then communicating what's going on. And don't forget about the gear either coming up or going down. I know a lot of times when the workload gets high and you're stressed and there's frustration and there's a little bit of panic kicking in, you may forget a thing or two, including that, also including the fuel situation for the airplane. That is so critical when you want to keep aviating, right? If you're out of gas, your navigation and your communication are also not for long. So those are just a couple examples here of aviating. What should be your top priorities when you're dealing with an abnormal situation? It could be something major, it could be something minor, but always aviate before everything else. And then it brings us to number 2, navigation. And obviously we're talking about headings and altitudes and instructions generally that you've been given, and you're obviously trying to keep the nose pointed to the direction or the next fix or wherever you were going next anyway. But navigation also has to do with traffic awareness. For example, if you're approaching the airport environment, get a good idea of other traffic that's out there. When you're crossing a busy corridor, just a general awareness and knowledge of what else is out there. It also has to do with airspace compliance. And let me just say, if you're dealing with an abnormal situation in an airplane and you're worried about busting that invisible wall known as Class B airspace, don't even think twice about it. That's just a make-believe place in the sky as it relates to something serious that you might have a life or death situation to figure out, a problem that really needs your attention. I mean, generally, yeah, you want to comply with all the airspace and where you're supposed to be and where you're not supposed to be. But if it comes down to solving a very important problem or busting the Bravo, don't worry. You can explain it later and you'll have no problem being understood. So aviate's number 1. When you've got that down, then navigate. And that brings us to number 3. Then communicate. And I think the theme here and what you're realizing is that you have to prioritize your workload. Those two things before you get to a true play-by-play in real time of what's going on in the airplane, what you're working on, and what you plan to do next. You know, sometimes you'll get this from a controller, whether it's ground or tower or approach or departure or center. They'll tell you to simply stand by. It's not often that an airplane will tell a controller that very same thing. But if you have a lot going on and you're not ready to communicate yet, if you're still working on number 1 or number 2, standby is a simple solution to that. Not enough pilots use that one magic word. Obviously, when you're ready, you want to advise what's going on. Most importantly, you want to advise your intentions, but always remember this. As much as the communication might help, as much as it might benefit you to have somebody else in the loop of what's going on, that controller is never going to be the pilot in command. They're not ultimately going to have to make a decision. They're not the ones at the controls of that airplane. Do what's in your best interest, absolutely. Get their help. I mean, and they can be of great assistance to you in trying to figure out options, to be, another resource for you. It's almost like having another person in your flight deck all of a sudden. But draw a distinct line between how they can help you and the things they absolutely cannot do with you because they're not in the airplane. So look, I know it's a simple slogan, it's a simple saying, and it's everywhere, but it's so important to really understand, especially for new pilots. Always aviate first, then navigate, then communicate in that order. This one golden rule is going to keep a lot of people safe.